All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about Friedrich Nietzsche, and honestly, he's one of the most electric, most profound, but also most misunderstood philosophers in all of history. So, for the next few minutes, we're going to try to unpack the core ideas of the man who famously said he philosophized with a hammer. Let's get to it. So, this is the big one, Nietzsche's most famous, most explosive line. And it's so often taken as this cheer for atheism, right? But that's not it at all. If you actually look at the book where this comes from, The Gay Science, the guy saying this is a madman. He's literally running through the town square, panicking. This isn't a victory cry, people. It's a fire alarm. And here's the key thing to get. Nietzsche wasn't just, making a simple observation that people were becoming less religious. No, no. He was pointing to a massive underlying crisis. Think about it. For 2,000 years, that belief in God was the bedrock for everything in Western culture. Our morality, our laws, what we thought was right and wrong. And Nietzsche's point was that that foundation, it was cracking, it was turning to sand, and a lot of people hadn't even noticed yet. Which, of course, leads to the absolutely terrifying question that sits at the very heart of his work. I mean, if the foundation is gone, what happens to the building that's sitting on top of it? What's going to stop our entire system of values from just collapsing into absolute meaninglessness, into what he called nihilism? To even begin to answer that, Nietzsche knew he had to go back. He had to become a kind of philosophical archaeologist and dig into the very history of how we decided what good and evil even mean. And what he found? Well, it was shocking. He argued that our whole sense of morality, what we think of as good, wasn't some gift from above, and it wasn't some perfectly logical truth. Nope. He believed he'd uncovered a hidden story, a secret history of a dramatic power struggle that turned our whole concept of good and evil completely upside down. Okay, so Nietzsche basically found these two completely opposite moral systems. First up, you have what he called noble morality. This was the morality of the ancient, powerful aristocrats. The strong, the proud. They just looked at themselves and all their strengths and said, this is good. And everything else, the common, the weak, that was just bad. It was a morality that came from a place of strength. But then, something else started to bubble up from the people who had no power. And this is what he called the slave revolt in morality. It all started with this feeling he called ressentiment, which is this kind of toxic, resentful hatred that festers when you're powerless to fight back. So they couldn't beat their masters on the battlefield, right? So they did it psychologically. They performed an amazing trick. They looked at their master's strength and said, that's not just bad, that is evil. And by flipping that, they could then look at their own meekness, their own suffering, and say, we are the good. For Nietzsche, this was a brilliant but venomous act of spiritual revenge. And this new way of thinking, it's bred and ended up completely taking over the Western world. So let's recap. If our morality is really born from this kind of revenge and its original justification, God, is gone, where the heck do we go from here? We're in a vacuum. Well, Nietzsche's answer was that we need a new engine. We need to tap into a fundamental force that drives everything, a force he called the will to power. Now, the will to power is probably his most twisted and misunderstood idea. So let's be super clear. It is not just about wanting to dominate other people. That's a crude, simple take on it. For Nietzsche, the will to power is this basic, fundamental drive in all living things to overcome challenges, to grow, to expand. It's the tree pushing its roots through rock. It's the artist struggling to shape a masterpiece. And most importantly, it's about power over yourself. It's about self-mastery and becoming stronger. And this quote right here shows you just how deep this idea goes. Willing liberates. Okay, great. But what's the thing that puts even the liberator, your own will, in chains? That's the will to power. It's this raw, primal energy that's even deeper than our conscious choices. And Nietzsche says that's the energy we have to understand and channel if we're going to create new values and aim for what he saw as humanity's true goal. Okay, so we've got the crisis, the death of God. We've got the engine for a solution, the will to power. So what's the destination? Where are we trying to go with all this? Well, Nietzsche lays out a new goal for humanity, the Übermensch. You'll hear it translated as the overman or sometimes the superhuman. And this image he gives us is just so powerful. Humanity is a rope stretched over an abyss, tied between the animal we came from and the overman we could become. Just think about that. He's saying we aren't the finished product. We're not the point of it all. We are a dangerous crossing, a transition, and we could either make it to the other side or fall. And we have to be really clear about this because this idea was horribly twisted later on. The overman is not some kind of master race. It's not about ruling over others. It is a deeply personal psychological goal. The overman is the person who has the strength to look into that abyss of meaninglessness we talked about and not flinch. They're the ones who create their own values, their own purpose, and truly become the artist of their own life. So what does this new kind of person actually value? Well, it's about embracing hardship because that's what makes you strong. It's about having the guts to face uncomfortable truths. It's about being an individual, forging your own path. And maybe most of all, it's about affirming life, saying a powerful, joyful yes to everything this life throws at you, the good and the bad. He had a great name for this, amor fati, the love of your fate. But how do you really know if you're living like that? Well, Nietzsche came up with one final, ultimate test. And this might be his most profound and honestly, most chilling idea of all. And he's very clear. This isn't a theory about how the universe actually works. It's a thought experiment. A question he called the greatest weight, designed to test your entire outlook on life. Okay, so picture this. A demon slips into your loneliest loneliness and says to you, this life, the one you're living right now, you're going to have to live it again and again and again. Innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every single boring to-say, every stupid mistake, all of it, exactly the same on an endless loop for eternity. And here's the test. What's your immediate reaction? Do you throw yourself to the ground and curse that demon? Does the thought absolutely crush you? Or would you look back at that demon and say, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? To be able to say yes to that idea, to welcome it, that, for Nietzsche, is the highest form of life affirmation. That's amor fati in action. That is the spirit of the overman. And just like that, this wild philosophical idea becomes intensely personal. It's not about cosmology, it's about you. He flips the whole thing around and leaves us with this challenge. Forget whether it's true or not. Just ask yourself, if you knew you had to live this exact life over and over and over for all eternity, what would you change starting right now? How would you have to live so that you could hear that demon's news with joy? And that is the challenge he leaves for every single one of us.